Hey humans, how's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. This is episode 414, and my guest is Dima Barch. Dima was born in Russia. He was a film critic and culture and society journalist there, but was forced to flee. He's an award-winning writer-director. His films Dead End and The Power of the Strike are exceptional. I've seen both of them. His stories shine a light on complex trauma, toxic masculinity, sexuality. They're really complex and beautiful. Definitely the work of an auteur. Really lovely and stunning work. I met Dima at the Portland Horror Festival. We both had films there and got to be friends. And he's a really cool guy. And his story is a fascinating one. He's been through a lot. General stuff. I'm on Patreon at Susan Ruthism. Check out heyhumanpodcast.com for links and to learn more about my guests and the show. Check out susanruth.com to learn more about me and my other artistic endeavors. Follow Susan Ruthism and Hey Human Podcast on social media. Find my albums on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your music. Rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human Podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you for listening. Thank you for coming along for 8 years. Be well, be kind, be love. Here we go. Dima Barch, welcome to Hey Human.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you too after, 2 weeks or 3 weeks after Portland Horror Film Festival, which was incredibly good. And I love our meeting and yeah. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I met so many incredible people at that festival. Everyone was kind and creative and interesting. I had a couple top films that I watched as a spectator, even though we both had films in it, and it was fun to do the Q&A with you and all of that. Your film, Dead End, stood out to me. It's so exceptional, and I thought, okay, we had met sort of in chatting and in passing and stuff, but like, I need to know this person who created this. And I just today watched your other film, The Power of the Strike. Brilliant. Loved it. So you're really a talent. And I think that there are a lot of people I'm just going to gush on you for a second. There are a lot of people out in the world that do really beautiful work, have really beautiful art, and say a lot with very little time or space to do it in. And you definitely are, to me, a cut above most of the stuff I see. So well done. Bravo.
Yeah, it's so important to hear because, sometimes it's so dark around, my story, and probably I'll share it with your audience as well. When you're meeting people or, filmmakers or just people from the crowd that could, appreciate your art, see something in it, it's just a good reminder. There is something that could push you forward, that could, make your life reasonable.
Well, and I think too, creatives have a lot of, I speak for myself. I think we have a certain level of self-doubt, which is twofold. It pushes us to do more, to work harder, but it also, once we create a thing, we think, all right, now I've sent my baby off into the world and it's not up to me how it does. I've done everything I can do. Now it's up to the baby to get people to respond.
For sure.
And you can forget, that, I worked really hard on this and I'm really proud of this. But in the moment, you're like, oh my God, this person is watching it now.
Yeah, for sure. But, at the end of the day, we're making art for ourselves. You'll never predict the reaction. Because, this reaction doesn't depend on you. This reaction doesn't depend on your talent, initial aim, or something like that. So many people, so many reactions, so many love-hate relationships and stuff like that. We just need to express yourselves.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head in that I don't know about you, but I can't imagine spending a life doing anything other than the creative work I do.
Yeah, and for me, really obvious that I just can't do anything besides, like filmmaking, besides art. Because I used to be a journalist and I did that like 10 years or so. I burnt out like completely. I almost committed suicide because of that. And I got this idea that I just can't do anything. Because I found this passion, this one and only thing that makes my life reasonable, makes my life something.
Worth living.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. And that's why I just can't, like quit.
Yeah, I get it completely. Let's go back to the beginning of you. Let's talk about where you're from and what childhood was like.
Yeah, I'm from like really small town close to Moscow. It's like county to Los Angeles. This town called Krasnogorsk, and it's famous by its Soviet really famous cameras called Zenit. So we got this Zenit factory really close to my mom's place. It's like 15 minutes walk or something. So it's kind of cinematic town, but it's like in the middle of nowhere. Even being like really close to Moscow, it's basically like the border between Moscow and Moscow region or something. So basically, I'm like Moscow kid, but got this feeling of being stuck in the middle of nowhere because our town is like really small. A lot of people know each other, and yeah, it got like its own mentality, not like big city mentality, but something rural, something suburban. So yeah, I'm from this place with a lot of different people, bad people, good people, and I always wanted to escape, wanted to run away from this place. That's why from my early teenager years I was like in Moscow, like each and every day I'm getting this, like public transportation to get there, and like attending different screenings and like events and stuff like that. Yeah.
As a kid, you would go to screenings even then?
Yeah, firstly, I've been always like fascinating with film world, with cinema, because when I was like 4, my parents were divorced, and then they remarried, got their own families, and my dad like disappeared from my life for a year or something, and then he got back as weekend daddy, something like that. And he brought me to the local cinema theater and showed me like a lot of stuff that ended up as a huge part of myself. I don't know, Iron Man from Marvel Studios, like Casino Royale, which was like one of the most, like one of the first films that I saw in theaters, I guess. It was so such a big deal for me. Or even Saw franchise, it was kind of crazy, but it was like a part of my education, a part of my like 2000s. So yeah, I got this fascination, and when I was a kid, I started to play these different social media quizzes, competitions. Like to get free tickets to different advanced screenings and stuff like that. And sometimes I got like big ones. I attended this Russian premiere of the movie called Total Recall. It was like remake with the Colin Farrell, and I still got this screening invitation with signed by Colin Farrell somewhere in Moscow. Yeah, and one of these screenings was actually not like public screening, but was like this professional event was like press screening. It was, as far as I remember, it was Now You See Me, the movie by Louis Leterrier about these magicians with Jesse Eisenberg and stuff like that. And it was very first press screening for me. It was my, like accidental thing. But at the end of the day, I got this connection to one of these journalists that got the job on one of these online medias, and through this person I got this like being contributor for this social, not like social but just online media outlet or something. And it was like very beginning for this journalistic Johnny, journalist Johnny. And then I got like a lot of different jobs, like being an anchorman and like radio host and writing for different really famous media outlets like Forbes or GQ or Esquire, something like that. Yeah.
I'm curious, did the politics of the region filter in to the films? Were they edited at all? Did they, when as a journalist yourself, did you start to feel any kind of containment around you?
Firstly, I covered film only, and then I got this transition to, like politics and social journalism. There was like no censorship in this, I don't know, like wide sense. But with each and every year, it's getting worse. For example, we got this Rocketman situation. This movie Rocketman about Elton John, played by Taron Egerton, which is incredible. I mean, like the actor incredible, the movie is incredible. Like each and every part of this movie, like so uplifting. I love this one, and I love musicals, and it's like a musical as well. In Russia, these local distributors decided to go with some like self-censorship stuff. They cut this sex scene off from the movie, and they cut off this, like final like quote, like this when we got these movies about like movies based on true events, we got like something that happened like next, and they cut this line about him and his husband off. So sometimes it could be censored like this. Or, like sometimes there are some lines in different cartoons, like animation, like Pixar animation, about, like female character talking about her, like a female partner or something like that. And at the end of the day, it's just partner, not like female partner. It could happen like this. Or sometimes some movies could be banned in Russia. Like there was the movie called The Death of Stalin, something like that. Armando Iannucci satire, like really good one, and it was like ready to go to theaters. Almost came out, and just before like 2 or 3 days before the release day, it was like banned because of like politics and this really sensitive theme for Russian government, because like Russia is still like Soviet. Yeah. So sometimes it happened, but now like different legislations are getting worse, and yeah, there are no room for queer films, for like real politics on screen and stuff like that. And it mostly it came from distributors, because like they are just afraid of like being bumped by the government.
Sure. Was there a real sense in the community, and as a kid growing up as well, knowing that LGBTQ people are looked down on or even killed? Tell me about that and how it was to be around that atmosphere.
Yeah, almost all my life I was like the part of this, like liberal, high progressive Moscow bubble. And it was a good thing for me because, like this bubble got more freedom than, like different cities in Russia besides Moscow, St. Petersburg, or Nizhny Novgorod. We got like some rural and suburbans that could be, like even more tough. But even in this bubble, I got this idea that I couldn't be like openly, I don't know, gay or openly queer or openly minded even, because something was in the air. Like you feel suppressed, you feel, like scared, something like that. And now it's even unbearable. I'm really afraid of, like this situation with the Russian queer kids right now. They got no representation around. They got no rights to just to date someone that they are like.
Yeah, it's illegal, right?
It's basically illegal. Yeah, because like now LGBTQ community was named as extremist organization,
Oh
something like
God,
that in Russia.
extremists, Lord.
Yeah, it's like it's basically like illegal. Yeah, that's crazy. Basically, gay people are terrorists, in Russia. I mean, according to the law. So yeah, it's a huge part of Russian government's mentality and Russian government's protection policy. When you're trying to stay in power, you're trying to find this inner enemy. Before the war started between Russia and Ukraine, and like they found like not inner but outside enemy, they tried to find enemies inside the country. And it could be like, immigrants, it could be gay people, it could be like minorities, let's say like that.
Do you worry when you see America's policies heading in those directions?
A bit, because like Russia's so alike the US. Because like for example, I got a lot of conversation with different Americans about your history, about the history of the country, and probably like Obama's years were like the best years for the country,
Mm.
and we got the same with like these 4 years with President Medvedev, which now is gone mad, unfortunately. But before that, it was like so liberal. He was so close to Obama as well, and we got like a lot of common points. But fortunately, the US got really strict judgment system or something. Russian court is so connected to the government, and there are no room for like freedom in this field as well. So it's like basically the US, but worse, in the worst way. So yeah, I'm pretty worried, but I still got some hope, because if America falls, so the world falls.
Yeah, I believe that too. Tell me about when you started to create what we would call in America a rabble rouser, when you started to create some conflict and you began to realize that the things you were writing and saying were on the watch list.
When I burnt out with this, like film journalism and stuff like that, I achieved a lot of different fancy stuff, like being on film set, or like doing junkets with different celebrities. I got this idea that I need to make this transition to filmmaking. But like filmmaking is hard, and while you're like developing your like first short and then feature, you need to do something else, like paycheck job or something like that. And I still was doing journalism, and I started doing like this entrepreneur job. Like I ran this cinema theater in downtown Moscow. I did some private and public events for different like rich people and stuff like that, just to earn money to pay rent and stuff like that. But still, I was doing journalism, and I decided to make my journalism like more reasonable. Because like for me, part of this burning out was like this film journalism with this like small talk interviews. It doesn't make sense. But like when you're doing something social and political, it could be reasonable, even in the countries like Russia. And so I decided to be honest with the white audience. I wrote this essay about my generation, Generation Z, and our attitude to sex and sex on screen, which was like a huge splash. Like a lot of people were talking about this essay, talking about my vulnerability, my sensitivity, and stuff like that. And I was like even bullied by these people on Facebook, like elderly.
Bullied or buoyed?
Bullet. I mean, like they try to be so aggressive and like hurt me in different ways, and it was like, yeah, I was a bit ruined, but I learned my lesson, and it's a good thing for being like art person, because like when you're an art person, you could be like hurt even faster and more crucial and stuff like that. Yeah, and after this essay, I got this idea that I'm really good in it, and I could talk, like to a lot of people about these controversial themes. And I got some essays about my generation now attitude to politics, to Russian opposition. I was covering this, like this like generational thing. And when you're talking about yourself, you're talking about different themes and topics. And so I wrote a lot. And I was like a part of this opposition bubble in Russia because I got a lot of friends in different Russian independent medias at that moment. The person who I went through the university with, she's like the main anchor woman in this Russian opposition media or something, Russian independent media. Even now, they're abroad, but still doing journalism. So yeah, I was a part of these people, and I just got this idea that yeah, I'm so loud. I'm not that loud as a politician, but I'm pretty loud to be, like on the list. So yeah, it was like this.
Did you get contacted by someone that told you to quiet down, or was it an idea?
Mostly it was an idea, and I was arrested twice because of peaceful protests. It wasn't like crucial. It wasn't like being sent to the jail and stuff like that. But still, like when you're running away from the police, which we are calling, astronauts, like cosmonauts, because, like they got this huge ammunition and it's kind of scary. In the morning, you could go through the street with a cup of latte, doing your like basic life, fancy life sometimes. But in the evening, you could run away from the police in the same street. And it's kind of scary. I got this feeling still with myself. And I saw like a lot of crazy, brutal, and violent stuff in Moscow streets, like women being hurt by policemen, and like being beaten by like their sticks and stuff like that. It's completely different experience. Like when you're watching something on screen, even in the documentary, even knowing that it's like real life, it's something different when you see, like it's just by yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's so terrifying about here, that there are voiced opinions saying, "Oh, well, all protests should be illegal." That
All protests in Russia is illegal. Even before the war started, they the city authorities needed to approve the protest, but like they got a lot of different things that could cover, this protest ban, like COVID, like policy, like you didn't get enough coverage or something like that. I mean, like they tried to find different reasons to suppress the protest, and they was doing, like well in terms of that.
the police came to your mom's house.
Yeah, it was actually after my fleeing. So when the war between Russia and Ukraine started, I got this idea that it could be, like danger for me, like an actual threat, not like an idea. And I fled the country after, it was like 1 week after the war started. And it was March 2022. And in November 2022, they came to my mom's place. Like 8 times, they came for me and tried to find me, to threat her a bit. Yeah, and it was scary, but she is not in danger, and I'm not in danger because I'm not in Russia, anymore.
How did you get out?
I just bought my ticket to Istanbul, Turkey, and I was interrogated on the border, but like I tried to mix up, like some stories and stuff like that. I just told them that I was like fancy kid who is going to Turkey just to see the new Batman, and I showed them my socks with Batman, and try to convince them, and it was like good. I mean, like I was scared, but it wasn't like they just checked my phone, and I before that I deleted all the stuff that could say that I'm like big person for policy politics and stuff like that. Yeah. So I came to Istanbul, Turkey with no backup plan, with duffel bag and $200, and I even got no place to stay that night. And it was like one of the scariest day of my life. I remember this day when I was sitting at the Starbucks in Istanbul with really shitty drip coffee and eating my oatmeal, which I brought with me from Moscow. It was like a part of my coping mechanism, like this food delivery. And I was eating this oatmeal, I was drinking this drip coffee, and then it was protein bar, as far as I remember. And I was crying a lot because, like my life became so unclear. And it was like my life was ruined in a day, and I needed to rebuild it from scratch. And I'm still doing this, even after 3 years.
Wow. It's so brave.
Yeah, but sometimes you're just doing this. I got this idea that I needed to do that. I mean, I just don't know why. Just got this strong idea, strong feeling that it could be right. And I was right, like now I could be in prison or something.
Or dead.
Or dead, even that, or even like being in the war field or something like that, killing like people from the other country.
I'm curious what the overall thoughts are of the people of Russia toward the politicians, toward Putin. Is there a sense of, I'm terrified, so I'm not going to say a word, or this is bullshit, we have to do something?
Yeah. Honestly, we don't know. Because, like in countries like Russia, it's really scary to be open publicly. And when we are getting these like research results, like different studies and stuff like that, these studies are not so, like accurate, because a lot of people are just scared to be, like to stick to their guns, like publicly, openly. And so now we just don't know the percentage of the people who are like against the country. I mean, like the government. But the point is that before the war started, for sure, we got this commitment. I mean, like not the people like me, but the whole country got this commitment that government should do politics and people should do their own lives. Like, it's like the separate things. We are going to these elections to, like to keep Putin in power, just to be safe and stable, just to be, like sure that the next day would be like the previous day. And a lot of people still thinking like this. So it's tricky. You'll never know, and you'll never say something, like that could be proved.
Yeah, I get that. Is the most of Russia older, or is there a lot of Gen Z age people there?
Gen Z is bolder, like are bolder, like each and every person, like not like all of us, but a lot of people are so open-minded because, like our childhood and our education was connected to Western culture, because 2000s were like so open to different franchises, film franchises, like animation TV series, like just we were like a part of this cultural Western culture, that's why we are, like we were seeing a lot of countries, different ways of living, and we were not like Soviets, which were like so inside this country under this protection and stuff like that. That's why we are so open-minded. And sorry, a lot of people from my country and from my age, they are so open and they are definitely against to Putin's policy. But when we are talking about elderly, they are so brainwashed by propaganda. Unfortunately, they are, like not that bold, not that, like conscious. And their minds are like trash, unfortunately.
Yeah, they're so used to a certain way of being.
Yeah, for sure. And almost every family got the person like this. My granny is like brainwashed, and
Did you say bread and borscht?
brainwashed.
Oh, brainwashed. I thought bread and borscht. What a great
Oh my
way
God.
to put it. Like old school.
It would be awesome, actually. But no, unfortunately, she's brainwashed by propaganda, by this thing that I were talking about already. Yeah.
We have a lot of that in this country as well. I think they focus in on the elderly because they know that they can fill them with fear. Older people are afraid of a lot of things.
Yeah, and there is another thing in Russia called resentment. It's like a thing that makes you feel great about getting to your roots, getting to your history, and stuff like that. Like it's actually living in your reminiscence or something.
Makes sense.
And it's like a huge part of Russian government, like
make Russia great again.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But even more worse, like even worse. I mean, like it's like not make Russia great again, but like let's Russia stay great, like forever and ever, something like that.
Yeah. How did you decide to take the leap then to start making film? I mean, it sounds like you're going through a lot. You made the movies in Russia, correct?
No, my first one, The Dent, was made in Russia.
Okay, all right.
Back in 2021, and my second one, The Power of the Strike, I made it last summer in Berlin. It was tough, but as a person from this like film community and being just famous, I could be trusted by these people with some money. I was pretty famous, and I wasn't supposed to disappear, with this money. And I got a lot of connections in this film industry. Like a lot of friends of mine were actors or different production and costume designers and stuff like that. And I started to get all this team together. And I just did that. Yeah, I got this script. I got this person who trusted me. I got these people around, and we just did that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful film. It's so well shot.
Thank you so much. And it was like a really big thing for me, and still is. Because, like when you're a filmmaker, you need to be exceptional in terms of your visual aspect, a visual aspect of your movies. Because it's like your job. And I'm so fascinated with this stuff, like with these filmmakers who are like, like visionaries, something like that. And yeah, because of my journalism and because of my fascination with cinema, I was watching a lot. I'm still watching a lot. And I got this like really huge viewer experience. And sometimes you get something consciously, sometimes subconsciously, but it's building your film identity, your taste, your like great look or something like that. Because I just can't process. I just can't get this ugly look for movies. Even knowing that the movie could be like low budget movie, you could make amazing things with no money.
Yeah, it takes ingenuity. And I almost feel like my movie was low budget as well, and I feel like it forces you into corners.
So stylish movie, yeah, as well. Because like you just got this idea that you need to find the perfect location, good looking actors, good production design, explicitly loud effects, and something like that. And you're like just a film buff or something like that. You know this for sure.
Yeah, it's a journey. What's your plan? What's next?
I'm trying to develop one of this feature that I already wrote. I wrote two features, and I got a lot of ideas for different shorts. I'm hustling to find this money. I'm applying to different competition, like incubators and stuff like that. Like different, a lot of studios got some programs and stuff like that. Because I need to be lit. I need to be seen by people. I was, as I told you, was pretty famous in Russia, but I was nobody to the world. And at that moment, I needed to establish my, public image. And I'm doing well, but still, it's so slow process.
Mm.
And I'm trying to be like multitasking, like doing each and everything simultaneously. Because, you'll never know which of these projects, could be your first, second, or something like that. Or one connection could lead you to the other connection, and this connection could work, but the first one couldn't work out, and something like that. And so it's like a game, and I'm trying to get the rules of this game, but it's so tough, so hard, and I'm so dark because of these objective things around. But I'm still trying to grab this idea that I'm talented, that I'm a really good director, because I got this idea that I wasn't that well journalist or something.
You're a great journalist. I read that article that I put on my social media that you wrote for the Hollywood Reporter, and I thought it was great. I mean, you're clearly an excellent writer on top of the other things. I'm curious, I think there would be a market if you were to write about your experience there for here. I think people would definitely read them.
Probably, but I'd rather put it in my films.
I get that. Yeah.
For example, my second feature that I already wrote, it's about, this personal experience, this, being an immigrant and facing American privileges and facing suicidal crisis. I'd rather put it into my movies. And I hope I could make it and it could be marketable. Because, sometimes when you're I don't know, at the same time, queer, dark, and stuff like that, it could be tricky, to get money because you're not that cute, you're not that, calm, and you're not creating the safe space for the people with money. But sometimes I just can't doing something else.
Yeah, I totally understand that. Your films are dark, but they're the underlying what's going on, the true story of it. I mean, there's the story that is the story being fed to the consumer that they're eating. And then as they're eating it, one hopes that they see the whole meal. There's way more going on. And in my opinion, at least, Dead End, especially, Power of the Strike as well, but Dead End really, to me, had such an intense theme about judgment and family and expectation and self-loathing. There's so much going on. And aside from it being twisty and so beautiful in that darkness, and we all have shadow.
Mm-hmm.
And it's for us, the creatives, I think it's important. We have such a job to do to remind people that, yes, you do have these thoughts. This stuff does go on. And it's okay to talk about it. And it's okay to get it out. Because if we don't and you shove it down,
yeah,
what's the point of living?
Exactly. And thank you for these words. Yeah, it's so important to put something in the crowd minds. I don't know. But for me, it was just a way of talking to people. It was like I wanted to, to tell my story through this horror lens, through this, roller coaster and something like that. But it was really something really personal. That was my personal experience of being afraid of my ex. And and also it was a part of this miseducation in Russia, because we got a lot of parents that are not supporting in terms of your like identities, different identities, not only being queer, but also being, like sensitive, being yourself.
Yeah.
That's why, like probably Dead End was like so intense.
Mm.
Because, like there are so many themes within. I'm from the country with like great literature and a lot of, like metaphorical layers of this, like ideas and stuff like that. And I just wanted to, like to keep this movement,
Yeah.
to stay in this field. And I hope I will do that, like with my next films as well.
I don't doubt that at all.
Yeah, but like we got a lot of novelists and poets, and like all of them are, like we're making beautiful art. And unfortunately, we lost a lot of passion last years, but still a lot of Russian authors are really great, like even nowadays. And
Mm-hmm.
now a lot of them are abroad and trying to keep doing art as well,
Yeah.
different fields. Like we got a lot of musicians abroad, like novelists, like filmmakers, like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Tell me about how you got through your crisis.
I'm still getting through it. I don't know. I'm just trying to do art. I'm just trying writing. I'm just trying, like filming something and applying to different, like labs and stuff like that. Submitting to the festivals, going to the festivals, meeting different amazing people like you, and people could make you stay alive.
Yeah.
And probably it's like our like really good capital, like really good value. And especially in this, like genre community, each and every person, as you saw actually, each and every person is so like, I don't know, like warm, kind, nice, like these people, the finest people in the world. Because all of them are considering themselves as outsiders. And when you're an outsider, you're getting closer to the other outsider, right? And, like you need to be crazy to do filmmaking, especially genre filmmaking. You need to be so into it just to stay here, just like not to quit.
It's beautifully said. What I love about horror is how layered it is. How much is being said. I mean, some people might go to the movie and they just say, "Oh, slashers," or somebody's dropping dead or whatnot. But there's so much to it. Saw is a great example. The very first Saw.
Yeah, for sure. And I kind of hate this term elevated horror because, like horror was elevated like every time, you know. There is a book called, oh my God, It Came from the Closet, something like that. And it's about queer perspective on horror. It's a bunch of essays from different queer people, like trans people, like gay people, and stuff like that. People like that. This queer look on horror, queer take on horror, it's not about a special part of like queer horror or something like that. It's like a take on like horror in general, like Jaws, like The Exorcist, like Carrie, and films like this. And I love this idea that probably each and every horror movie got like queer theme within, and we could say that about like each and every theme that like under the surface, like Jordan Peele movies, like Get Out. It's about like racism, and it's about like a lot of things besides being this roller coaster in the genre field.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of art, music, movies, poetry, is again, the creative is saying or showing something so that other people can come and see themselves in it and find solace and find connection and feel like they're not alone. And I think that's the best part of it.
Yeah, yeah, of course. When you're in my position, like going through this crisis alone, like I lost my friends, family, and people around, and like I got no fields to hide. I got this, like film thing, like horror, and like this horror world could be like the perfect safe space because like even being scary, it's not that scary as a real world.
Yeah. Do you get to stay in contact with your mom?
Yeah, for sure. We are calling each other each and every day, probably. And yeah, we're trying to, like stay close, even being far, technically.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. Tell people how they might find you.
Yeah, I got my Instagram account called as me, like Dima Barch, and also I got my Twitter. And it would be Secret Saint on Twitter. Yeah, so I'm pretty open to be reached out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll put links on heyhumanpodcast.com. Thank you so much for spending some time with me and talking about your story.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you for, like your time and this opportunity because, like it's so important to share the story like mine. It's not like my situation at all. It's like the thing that the world right now is ruining. The world is not the best place right now. With all of these wars, like Ukraine, like Taiwan, like Palestine, like a lot of things, and like American policy right now, like politics. I mean, because like I couldn't even imagine that I could end up as a refugee on a lifeboat when I was like person in Moscow 4 or 5 years ago. For me, being a refugee, it's like being a person from Africa or something like that, or Iran. But like when you got this request for privileges, you got this almost PhD behind, and you're ending up as a refugee. It's kind of wow experience.
Yeah.
And sometimes people just need to think about this more.
I agree. It's frustrating, the rhetoric around political refugee, war-torn refugee, the people that are coming into the country, any country for that matter. I mean, they like to, the rhetoric likes to concentrate on it's all criminals. No, it's doctors and nurses and psychiatrists and pharmacists and teachers and writers and beautiful, interesting, creative humans.
For sure. And like sometimes when you're just speaking more than one languages, you just couldn't be considered as a refugee or like person in danger or something like that. These people like on social media just see your like public image and like that you're like fancy person still, but you're going through like dark shit with like this immigration system, with this paperwork, with this like apartment looking or something like that. And yeah,
Yeah.
this way of living is kind of tricky. Yeah.
Yeah, you're doing really well. I know it's hard. I can only imagine what it is to go through it, but you've got a friend in me. So,
Thank you so much. And likewise, I really appreciate that. Because, like, as I told you, people, it's like our main value.
yeah, it takes all of us, in my humble opinion. And I'm excited because you're going to come meet some really cool people on Thursday.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to
yeah.
meet. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dima. I really appreciate it. And thank you for listening, everybody.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human Podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks. Bye.